Welcome to Deen Signal. Today we're doing a deep dive into, well, a really specific question, actually.
hmm
It's about the Islamic view on writing Quranic verses on your body, for healing, like ruqyah.
Right. And also the follow-up question that naturally comes up.
Exactly.
hmm
What about entering the toilet when you have these verses written on you? It feels like a tricky intersection of sort of sacred practice and just everyday life.
It does. And people are curious. So we're aiming for clarity today, drawing on some solid Islamic sources.
Yeah, we've got an answer here from the Islam Q&A website, and it digs into, scholarly opinions, hadith, the
Or
works.
our mission really is to unpack the rulings, understand why they are what they are, and give you some practical takeaways. Avoid any confusion.
Okay, let's jump in. First things first.
Yeah.
Is it even allowed in principle to write Quranic verses on the body for healing purposes?
Well, the source suggests that fundamentally there isn't anything wrong with it. It points to a hadith from Muslim where the Prophet, peace be upon him, basically said ruqya itself is fine as long as it doesn't involve shirk, associating partners with Allah.
Right, that's the bedrock principle for ruqya generally. No shirk.
Exactly. So that opens the door potentially to different methods of seeking that spiritual healing,
Wow.
including possibly writing.
And the source gives a historical example, right? Something about Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah.
Yes, that's a really interesting point it brings up. It mentions that Ibn Taymiyyah apparently wrote a specific verse, Surah Hud, verse 44, on someone's forehead.
For what?
For a nosebleed, the verse talks about the earth swallowing water, so you can see the connection he might have been making.
Huh. So a major scholar using this method for a physical ailment, that suggests it wasn't completely unheard of.
Precisely. It perhaps shows a way of seeking blessing, baraka, through the physical presence of the Quranic words in a specific situation.
But there must be rules, right? Like how you do it.
Oh, absolutely. A crucial point the source makes is you cannot use impure substances. So writing with blood, for instance, is completely forbidden.
Makes sense. The Quran's holy.
The sanctity of the Quran is, well, it's non-negotiable. That have to be maintained always.
Okay, so assuming you're using pure ink or something similar, are there limits on where on the body you can write?
Yes, definitely. The core principle, again, is avoiding disrespect. The source lists specific areas as inappropriate.
Such as?
The front and back private parts, under the armpits, the soles of the feet.
Right, places associated with impurity or being stepped on or sat on.
Exactly. Or even on the back if you're going to be lying down on it. It's
Wow.
all about preventing the sacred words from being treated without due reverence.
Got it. Respect is key. Now, the source also mentions some online discussions, people asking about writing verses specifically to, like, expel jinn.
It touches on that. And it brings in the view of Sheikh Abdurrahman al-Barak. He adds a layer of caution.
How so?
Well, while he acknowledges the Ibn Taymiyyah account, he says he's not aware of this practice, writing verses on the body for healing, having a basis in what the Sahaba or Tabi'in, the earliest generations, did.
So he's saying it wasn't a common or established practice back then.
That seems to be his point. He suggests that maybe its permissibility, if accepted, comes more from trial and error, kind of like how some medical remedies are discovered.
Interesting analogy. Like if people tried it and found it beneficial and it didn't violate core rules like no shirk.
Exactly. He connects it back to the general permission to use appropriate Quranic verses for ruqya, even if we don't have a specific hadith saying, recite this verse for that specific problem.
Because the Quran itself is described as a healing.
Precisely. Verses like Al-Isra 17.82, we send down from the Quran that which is a healing and a mercy, and Al-An'am 6.17 point to that broader healing power.
And of course, the Sunnah emphasizes reciting certain chapters and verses.
Definitely. Al-Fatiha, Ayat al-Kursi, the quals.
Mhm.
Those are strongly recommended for seeking protection and healing through recitation. So the foundation is recitation, but this idea of writing exists, albeit with some scholarly nuance.
Okay, let's circle back to disrespect. We covered location. What else constitutes disrespecting the verses if they're written on you?
Well, another important point is washing them off. You should do that in a clean place, not, letting the water run down the drain in the shower if that water mixes with general grime.
Ah, okay. Consideration even in removal.
Yes. And crucially, avoiding being in a state of janaba, major ritual impurity, while the writing is on you.
Right, the state requiring ghusl, the ritual bath.
Correct. If you happen to enter that state, the guidance is to hasten to wash the verses off, Letting them remain on the body in that state is seen as highly disrespectful.
That really emphasizes the need for constant awareness and maintaining reverence.
It does. It ties the physical state of the body to the respect due to the sacred text written upon it.
Okay, this leads us perfectly to the second major question, entering the toilet. What's the ruling if you have these verses written on your body? Can you go in?
The source indicates that, yes, it is permissible if the writing is covered.
Covered by clothing, presumably.
Yes, by clothing. The principle seems to be concealment, preventing the sacred text from being directly exposed in an unclean environment.
Is there more detail on that, like different scholarly takes?
There are. The source mentions Ibn Qudama in Al-Mughni. He recommended removing anything with Allah's name before entering the outhouse as a sign of respect.
A strong recommendation.
Yes, but he also noted a concession. If you do keep it, but take precautions like making sure it won't fall or turning a ring with Allah's name inwards,
Towards the palm.
right, then it's okay. Imam Ahmad is also mentioned as suggesting that specific action, turning the ring towards the palm.
So there's this idea of active concealment or protection.
Exactly. And it also mentions that early scholars like Ibn al-Musayyab, al-Hassan, and Ibn Sirin apparently allowed concessions too.
Okay. Any modern scholars mention?
Yes. Sheikh Ibn Uthaymin is cited. He explicitly said it's permissible to enter the bathroom with, say, papers containing Allah's name if they're safely inside a pocket. Concealed.
So the consistent theme seems to be concealment as the key factor for permissibility when entering the toilet.
That appears to be the practical ruling derived from these opinions, balancing the necessity of using the facilities with reverence for the divine name or words.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. What are the main takeaways from this deep dive?
Well, I think first, writing Quranic verses on the body for ruqyah is viewed as generally permissible, but it comes with really important conditions.
Conditions centered on respect.
Absolutely. No shirk involved, no impure substances used for writing, avoiding specific disrespectful locations on the body, and handling the removal carefully. Also, dealing appropriately with states of ritual impurity.
And second, regarding the toilet.
Entering the toilet is allowed if the verses are covered by clothing. This reflects a practical approach found in scholarly discussions, balancing reverence with daily needs.
It really highlights this balance, doesn't it? Seeking remedies or blessings through the Quran, but always upholding its sanctity.
Precisely. It shows how Islamic principles provide guidance not just for major acts of worship, but also for these very specific, almost mundane aspects of life.
Making you think about the layers of consideration within the teachings.
Yeah, it prompts reflection on how faith integrates into every part of our lives, demanding mindfulness and respect, even in unexpected situations.
A fascinating look at a very practical issue. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the sources. Hopefully it's provided some valuable clarity for you.